Hi there, guys. So I'm going to be trying something new today. I seem to be trying something new every video on this channel, but and I apologize for the shaky cam right now. I'm busy trying to use my iPhone for this video. I don't have a webcam or anything like that, but yeah, this is going to be a mouse review of the Roccat Kone EMP RGB. I got it about 2 weeks ago, and I've been playing with it on and off. And the off I will explain as I get into this review. Or I don't want to call it a review because it's not a very formal thing that I'm doing right now. It's more of just a personal impressions video. But yeah, I just thought I would give my feedback because it's a pretty new mouse, and yeah, I think people should know what they're getting into with this mouse, because it does some things really well, and it does and other things not so much. So anyhow, so let me get started. Okay, so basically, we're going to run through the shape and the specs and all that, the build quality, all the features and so on and so forth, and then we'll move on to, you know, more performance-oriented impressions and just overall impressions, and then I'll conclude the video with my overall thoughts on the mouse. So yeah, okay, so this is the Roccat Kone EMP RGB, as you already know. The RGB obviously stands for the color lighting on the sides. 16 million colors, 16.8 million colors according to them. I would say that's not really correct, but I will get into that just now. It's a pretty large mouse. If I take the Death Adder and the Rival and I put them side by side here, let me try get this right. This is very difficult to do. Let me just stand quickly. You should be able to see that it's far closer to the Rival in shape than the Death Adder. It's actually quite a bit bigger than the Death Adder. The Death Adder is wider, but the Death Adder doesn't have the height and the amount of surface area that one can grip that you would get on this mouse. So, but the Rival is quite a bit narrower than the Roccat Kone EMP RGB, and the Death Adder, like I said, doesn't have enough space for the fingers on the. If I show it on cam here, it doesn't have enough space for my fingers on the side here, so my fingers are rubbing the pad quite consistently, and it's very frustrating for me. So yeah, so the Roccat Kone has that going for it. And that's why I got it, because basically the shape looks to be something different to what I'm used to, and it actually seems to be quite close to the G400, which is, well, it seemed like it was, and it actually is. I was correct in that assumption. So if you're coming from an MX518 or a G400 mouse, I would recommend this just from that standpoint, and that it's the closest. Those are probably the closest mice to each other. However, this is a bit bigger and it's a bit longer, so I would say just be wary of that. And it's a bit wider as well. Like the width of the mouse, it takes a. I mean, I don't know if you can see from this, but my hand is quite large, and it's definitely wrapping around this mouse quite easily. But most people don't have hands as big as mine. So, but in the G400's case, and I have it right here. See, I'm prepared for this type of thing, you know. My hand wraps around even more. I mean, you can hardly see the mouse within the palm of my hand. So the Roccat Kone EMP RGB is the biggest mouse I've used so far, I would say, outside of the Death Adder width-wise. But like I said, the Death Adder doesn't really apply in the Death Adder's case, because it's got so little surface area in comparison. So moving on from that, so the mouse is 116 grams. And it does feel quite heavy, but that is because I'm used to lighter mice, being an FPS fan. So I'm coming from the, you know, using a G403 as my main mouse, also an FK1 Plus when I feel like it, using claw grip, or sometimes a Rival. I switch a lot. So, but it's the heaviest mouse outside of the G502 that I have right now. It's ideal for palm grip, I would say. Fingertip as well, though because of the heavy nature of the mouse, it could be a bit harder to control when doing large movements. Claw grip I would not recommend. if you look at the side of the mouse here, you'll see how my hand is gripping this mouse. There's a little, this is where the thumb groove starts, and I don't know if you can see it on this, but it juts out quite a bit. So it gives a lot of grip for a claw grip, but depending on how large your hand is, it could actually get in the way of your thumb when claw gripping the mouse. And also even palm gripping it, for smaller hands, I've seen people complaining about it getting in the way of their thumb, basically being right where the thumb joint is. Yeah, so I would say just be careful of that. So I would say if your fingertip or palm grip, consider it. Claw grip, I would say less so, because it's such a heavy mouse. It's wider than most mice, as I've already mentioned. I would say, unless your hands are over 20 centimeters in length from the base of your from your wrist to your fingertip, I would say don't get this mouse, because I mean, I'm 22 centimeters long. I've got very large hands, and yeah, I still find it quite large, so I would say be very wary of that. The scroll wheel is really good on this mouse. It's got horizontal scroll, as you can see from the arrows on the mouse there. It's actually one of the most sturdy mice I've used in terms of the scroll wheel. Most mice, the scroll wheel feels somewhat flimsy. Very few mice actually have quite sturdy scroll wheels. So I was quite surprised at the sturdiness of the scroll wheel, and the tilt doesn't activate by mistake. So I think that's a really cool thing. Yeah, and it's got a very rubbery texture to it. So I don't know if you can see, but it's a very rubbery wheel. Some might not like that though, because it might collect dirt and such, but I think it's a really cool scroll wheel. The DPI switch buttons are right there below the scroll wheel. It's plus and minus. I guess they were trying to cater to the more casual gaming crowd, those that like to switch DPI mid-game, you know, if they want to snipe or whatever it may be. But most serious gamers don't really do that much. So I would have personally preferred just a single DPI button, but I've hit it by mistake. I've hit I think the plus by mistake once or twice, but it's nothing major. I mean, if that's in 2 weeks, then it's not really a big issue. The RGB lighting is very unsatisfactory. I think they should have left it out. The software does not give you full control over the colors. The colors that are showing on my mouse right now look entirely different to what I selected in the interface. So I would say, if you're looking for a really pretty mouse, don't get this. There's better lighting in other mice, though I don't know why that's a selling point, because I don't feel like it is. But the lighting in the Logitech mice is better, just in terms of the glow quality and things like that, the transitions between colors. That's why you can see it's set to. Okay, no, it is actually glowing. It's just very infrequent. Oh wait, okay, so this is a problem I'm having. Before I move on, I mean, having an issue with this mouse, and I actually just started having it before this review. So luckily it happened, so I could actually mention it. But the mouse will just, sometimes the lighting will stop transitioning. It'll just stick, and then an input from the mouse will be refused. And I don't know, it could be a problem with my computer, with a USB port that I was plugging it in. I've moved it to a different USB port, and for the last 20-30 minutes it hasn't done it. But sometimes it's just been unresponsive, so I'm gonna have to watch that. But I just thought I'd mention it just in case. But I haven't been having major issues with this mouse, so I'm not gonna make a big deal out of it. The side buttons are great. No pre-travel. From what I can tell, at least on my model, they feel great. Excuse the marks on the mouse. I actually did clean it before this review, but then I started writing notes, and my mouse got dirty already. So it does collect fingerprints a bit. It does collect fingerprints sometimes. It's not awful. So, I mean, I would actually say it's better than a Zowie mouse, but yeah, still something to be wary of when comparing it to something like a glossy mouse, which obviously won't show as much on, or well, if it's a white glossy mouse, or something like the G400. Or even the Death Adder with its more granular exterior. It's got less of a smooth texture to the surface. Anyway, yeah, the mouse feet are quite good. I found them to be quite smooth, and yeah, I haven't had any issues with tracking. I've tried it on a couple mouse pads with my QCK Heavy, which is what I'm using here, and a Zowie GTFX, as well as a Razer Goliath Speed. Yeah, the mouse sensor is a PMW 3366 sensor. It's according to them. I mean, to me, it doesn't feel similar to the Logitech sensor, but I'll get into that later. But it's a 3366, and they've basically revised the firmware of the sensor to, and they're calling it their own sensor variant, which they've labeled the Owl Eye sensor. But I haven't had any issues with it, and it's been quite consistent. I can't, to be honest, I can't really notice the difference between this and the 3310 sensor. Whereas with the Logitech implementation of the 3366, I do notice a bit of a difference, an improvement. I feel like I do. You guys are gonna call bullshit on this, but I do feel like there's lower latency on the Logitech mice because of their implementation of the 3366. Whereas with this, I don't get that impression as much, but that could be due to the weight. However, the G502 does feel more responsive than this mouse, but obviously that's hard to say because the shells are also quite different. So anyway, the cord is a braided cord. Some may like that, some may not. I don't have an issue with it, and that's just because due to the speed at which I buy mice, I don't really ever use a mouse for 2 or 3 years non-stop and have that issue of the cord rubbing away on the mouse pad, you know, or whatever may happen with braided cords. But some may prefer rubber cords, but just to be clear, this is one of the best braided cords I've used. It's extremely malleable. It doesn't cause the mouse to move too much when I bend it, as opposed to something like the Final Mouse cord, which is just completely awful, as well as some older Logitech braided cords. I think I might be getting that wrong. I can't remember which ones it was, but the Death Adder cord is probably the closest. It's also very easy to use. The Logitech braided cords are not the greatest, but yeah. So I would say it's better than a Logitech cord, definitely. Moving on, so we've dealt with all the different aspects of the mouse, the shape, and well, at least the shell and the features in the shell. Again, so I'm going to preface this by saying that it's one of the most comfortable mice I've used. For desktop use, casual use, it's extremely comfortable, and that's because I've struggled during much of my life to find a mouse that actually fits my hands because they're so big. So I find it extremely comfortable from that standpoint. But yeah, that's because in a more casual or desktop scenario, you don't have to, grip the mouse as tightly. So moving on from the comfort of the mouse, as I said, it's really comfortable. Moving on from that, the sensor performance is really good. I haven't had any issues with it. There's been no spinouts or acceleration or lift-off distance issues. But again, I would say the 3366 is a better feeling sensor for me. I'm not sure why, but every Logitech, I'm not just speaking as someone who uses the G403 a lot. I mean, the G502, the G Pro, they both feel really responsive, and maybe it could be, my mind just making stuff up, but I get the feeling of lower latency with the sensor. So, but take that with a grain of salt. The mouse, it's very good for small flicks. Okay, so moving on to actual performance in game, in an FPS game. I'm going to be referring to referencing FPS games quite a bit because that's how I use my mice the most. I like to play Overwatch and Counter-Strike and Quake and whatever I fancy on the day. So my little flicks with this mouse are really easy to do. That's a trend though amongst heavy mice that I've found.
because of the additional weight. It takes more energy, more effort to actually move the mouse from A to B, and as such you have more control over the smaller flicks. You're not going to overshoot it as much and things like that. However, the negative to the heavier weight is that bigger flicks are harder to calculate, to predict. So I'm struggling to do 180s and even 45 to 90 degree turns with this mouse, where before I'd be able to flick the G403 from the left side, from 45 degrees across easy, and know that my cursor is going to land exactly where I intended to. After using this for a couple of days, I still can't do that. Whereas with the G502, I was doing that with ease after literally 2 days. So I do feel like it's the mouse, and I don't know why that may be, but I think it's simply to do with the heavier weight. So that's my guess. Tracking is quite difficult with this mouse as well. When you're doing a tracking movement, it's actually when you start learning how to get tracking down, it starts to become an automatic response. So the target is moving on the screen and your hand is actually just automatically following the target. You don't actually have to mentally, consciously attempt to track that target. Obviously practicing tracking is a conscious thing, but it gets to the point where your crosshair is actually just following the target. Maybe it might be a bit behind, but you start to get used to it. But with this mouse I couldn't get that, so that was a bit frustrating for me. I mean, where in Overwatch I could play soldier for days and seldom do badly, with this mouse I was an awful soldier. So I actually had a couple awkward competitive moments in Overwatch because I got called out on how badly I was playing, and I was really offended because usually my soldier is extremely good and my stats for soldier are pretty decent. So I just wanted to make a point of that. Quake Live Lightning Gun is the same situation. So just a heads up that I struggle to track with this mouse. Now, one of the reasons for that could be that horizontal movements don't feel right to me. I'm a bit of a wrist player, even with palm grip. So what's happening is I'm not feeling like the sensor movement is tying up with what I'm telling it to do in terms of the movements on my hand. So that could be due to one of two things. It could be the sensor position, or it could be sensor position. Yeah, it could be the sensor position. I think if it was further forward, it would enable wrist movements to have more purchase in horizontal, movements or vertical movements. But I don't know. I'm not sure what the exact reason is, but I feel like that could be the reason. But the mouse does fall further back into my hand due to its long nature. So I don't know if that is contributing to that sensation as such. So to conclude on that point, I don't play very well with this mouse in FPS games. I don't perform it very well. Flicks, tracking, both suffer, and I just haven't performed as well as I would. So I've been moving off of the mouse quite often because of that, and using it when I don't really feel like there's a lot of pressure on me to perform in competitive. I'm just playing with a group of friends or whatever it may be. But yeah, so. And one of the reasons, so I gave that reason that the sensor position could be causing an issue with my aim. One of the other reasons could be that the mouse has a wider grip. So I just want to warn you, because this has got a very wide grip. So in holding this mouse, I'm not getting I'm not feeling like it's in a perfect, I don't feel like I have control over the mouse at all times, unless I have a very firm grip, which obviously is quite demanding on one's forearms. So yeah, I would say that those two reasons are probably the reason for my struggling to aim with this mouse: the width of the grip and the sensor position. So yeah, using a low naturally, I guess I don't have to tell you guys this, but using a low sensitivity isn't really the perfect. This isn't the best match for someone using a low sensitivity because it's going to tire you out quite quickly, and yeah, I struggled to do 180s with it with a low sensitivity because I use anywhere between 4.5 and 5 in Overwatch, which isn't that low, but it's still somewhat low. And in Quake it's I can't remember, but that's at 800 DPI. Anyhow, I think that's enough rambling about this mouse. It might come across that I've been quite negative on this mouse, but I just want to say that I actually really like it. I think it's an awesome mouse. I find it really comfortable, and I like to use it on and off in between games. I just don't feel like it's a good choice for someone who's going to play competitively or seriously in an FPS or MOBA game, because I don't feel like it facilitates ease of flicks and just movement of the mouse and having the most control. So I would say if you're trying to take gaming really seriously, try to stay away from this. However, if you're more of a casual gamer and you've maybe come from the G502 and you're looking for something slightly different or simpler, try this out. It's bigger than the G502, but it's more comfortable in my opinion. It's got a better scroll wheel, and yeah, the build quality is really good. So yeah, I really do like this mouse, and I feel bad for dissing it as much as I have, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. So yeah, to conclude, if you've got a palm grip, if you use palm grip and you've got a large hand and you're a casual gamer, I'd say go for it. However, if you're not, those three things, maybe stay away and look at something else. Something smaller, something lighter, and something more focused on the competitive gaming thing. There is another Roccat Kone mouse coming out called the Pure. As of making this video, it's coming out tomorrow. I think it's 28th of April. I'm not sure. And yeah, that would probably be a better recommendation for a competitive gamer, because it'll be way lighter at 80 something grams, 89 grams I think, using the same sensor and set in the same shell, just a smaller version of it. So I would say keep an eye out for that if you're looking for something similar to this, but much more in tune with what an FPS gamer would want. Anyhow, I'm sorry for going on for as long as I have. It's been a really long video. I'm probably going to cut out a tremendous amount of this stuff, but thanks for watching, and I will if even one person finds this useful, I will be happy to do reviews of any of the other mice that I have, such as the G403, the G403, the G502, any of these mice, the Rival, the Death Adder, the FK1 Plus, the ZA11. I've got most of the mice on the market at the moment, so if anyone wants a comparison with this mouse as well, feel free to let me know in the comments. Anyhow, thanks for watching, and yeah, hopefully I can make another one of these in the future with slightly better filming quality. Cheers, thanks a lot guys.